traditional custodians of this area, and I'd like to, on behalf of all of us, pay our respects to their elders, both past and present. This is really exciting for me personally to be here. My name is John D. I'm going to be MC for today. I've been passionate about electric vehicles ever since I learned to drive when I was 40. I deliberately didn't drive because I said, I'm not going to do that. I've got to walk the talk as an environmentalist. So I didn't drive until there was a Prius on the road, and I'm glad to say that in the spirit of today, I drive 2 electric cars. So it's something I'm quite passionate about, and it's really exciting, Jan, as the head of IKEA in Australia, to see IKEA making these moves to electric vehicles. It's really good to see. The reason why we're here today is a lot of you are familiar with IKEA's People and Planet Positive strategy. And what we're here today for is the launch of IKEA's electric vehicle strategy, which forms part of that, so that by 2025, the aim is for IKEA to have all their delivery vehicles running as electric vehicles, so only be using electric vehicles, which is a very exciting commitment to be made. Before we go into the panel discussion, what I thought I'd do is just give you a bit of a global update on where things are currently up to on electric vehicles. I know I wanted to do that by starting to ask you a question. How many of you could tell someone else all about Tritium, the company Tritium? How many of you know that? You would know it, Steve. Okay. So the people who haven't put up their hand, what's interesting is Tritium, to say as an Australian you don't know Tritium is like an American saying they don't know who Tesla is. And Tritium, at the moment, are based in Brisbane. They make the world's fastest and, I think, best quality electric car chargers. So if you go onto the Autobahn in Germany and you want to recharge your fast electric car, the likelihood is you're using an Australian charger made in Brisbane. And what's exciting about these electric chargers is that they've created 350 jobs in Brisbane. But the reality is that most Australians have not heard of Tritium and have no idea about the great potential of electric vehicles, not just in terms of the cars and the batteries and the recharging side, but the fact that they can create jobs here and that we're leading the world. And that's something I want to talk about today with some of the panelists about how we can make these vehicles here in Australia. There are now 11 countries that have committed to phase out petrol and diesel vehicles by 2030 and 2040. And that includes countries like China and India and places like France, Germany, the UK, big countries. But if you look at places like Norway, they're committed to get rid of petrol and diesel cars by 2025. And last month, more than half of the cars sold in Norway were electric cars. So they're way ahead compared to us. And we're going to be talking about that today with the panel to look at how is Australia compared to the rest of the world. In China, where I went recently to check out the BYD factory, there are now 400,000 electric buses now in China. So when people say, oh, we should move in Australia once China's got off its bum and started doing stuff, they're way ahead of us on electric vehicles. So there's great opportunities here. And the Bloomberg New Energy Finance final stat, they say that there are now 4 million electric vehicles around the world. But the reality is now the growth of electric vehicles, both in the delivery vehicles we're going to talk about today and cars, is going to be very significant. As many of you know, last week, finally, Tesla brought out that $35,000 Model 3 that they've been promising us, and it's finally available to order. So why is the electric delivery so important? Now, if you think about it, a lot more of us now are buying things online. This has now become default for me. I prefer buying things online, and all the figures now show that we're seeing a big increase in the number of parcel deliveries. There's some really interesting research done by Australia Post and Star Trek, and I have to read these because these stats there's quite a few of them and they're quite big. So in Australia, in 2017, 4 billion items were delivered to 11.5 million delivery addresses. So we've seen a big increase in that. A lot of that, of course, from having, it's not just online shopping, it's people come to places like IKEA and they want the convenience of having that, whatever they're buying, delivered at home at a set time. They want the convenience, and companies like IKEA and many other companies want to give that convenience to the customers. But it means a lot more delivery vehicles on the road, and as we all know, it's all diesel-based. And so if you get diesel-based trucks, you get diesel-based pollution and diesel-based truck noise. And that's one of the things that we're going to be talking about today is why this is so much better with the direction that we're going in. By 2020, Australia Post say that 1 in 10 items will be bought online. So we're going to be seeing an even bigger growth. In Germany, 5 billion parcels. America, 25 billion parcels. So this is going to grow. So when companies like IKEA are doing implementing electric vans for deliveries, this sets a really important role model that other companies can follow. Now, the panelists today, we've got 3 people who are experts in their field, and rather than me tell you about them, I've been talking enough already, what I'm going to do with you guys, if it's okay, is can you give us your name, your title, your role, and in keeping with the theme of deliveries, tell us what was the last thing that you got delivered, you or a family member got delivered to your home? And Jan, if we can start with you.
Yes, hello everyone. My name is Jan Gardberg. I work as the CEO for IKEA Australia and now also New Zealand, that we're on the way to open up in a couple of years. Yes, I have a great passion for this topic that we're going to spend some time around here now. And I'm also, of course, as a private person, utilizing e-commerce. And the latest thing that I had delivered just yesterday was the NBN modem, because I've been without internet for almost 2 years now.
If it's an NBN modem, you're still going to be waiting for a while.
Hopefully not. They said different when I had paid all upfront $280 already, So that's what I got delivered, and they're just actually installing it right now. So
good luck. I've had it installed as well. Yes. Okay. And Mark, can we tell us about
Sure.
Tell us about yourself?
Thanks very much. My name is Mark Cameron. I'm the Regional Director for C Electric. C Electric's the company that's providing the driveline for the vehicles that IKEA will be using. And I'm the Regional Director for Australia and New Zealand. In answering what was the last thing I had delivered, this is going to sound contrived, but literally I had some sealed lead-acid batteries delivered recently via e-commerce as well, because I have an engineering background, so I'm developing my own solar battery system to control a number of different things in my backyard. So for me, it was batteries.
James.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm James Taylor. I'm the Managing Director of ANC. We are last mile delivery professionals. Look, my role is a strategic role, so I look after the strategic direction of ANC, particularly in safety and innovation and technology. Last delivery, it was actually this week. I had to purchase a fridge. My fridge blew up late last week, and I understand when you buy a fridge after your one's blown up, it's a bit of a grudge purchase, so you're not very happy about buying it. But it was delivered just a few days ago, and it was installed, and very happy.
Okay, for the next 20 minutes, I'd like to ask you guys some questions. Jan, if I can start with you. When I was presenting my Smart Money show on Sky News Business Channel, I loved IKEA because if I was running short of stories, there was always a really good sustainability story coming out from IKEA that I could fill the gaps with. So you're really committed as a company to doing real innovation on sustainability in business. So my question to start this off is, you're doing a lot of other things on sustainability, but what are you actually trying to achieve with your electric vehicle strategy? And not just here, but I was on ABC Radio 2 weeks ago talking about what you're doing in India with electric vehicles. What's your plan there?
Yeah, it's actually going back just a few years when the decision was taken for electrical vehicles. We have done quite a lot of internal discussions, and I think that in our company in IKEA we like clarity and we like 100%. So at that point of time, a couple of years back, we said, okay, let's go for 100% all in when it comes with electrical vehicles, and that we want to achieve totally within the total IKEA sphere for home deliveries and also services that are delivered by 2025. And then when we sat down and when the decision had been made, the first question that came was, but how shall we do it? And I think that's the way that we like to develop ourselves, to give ourselves a challenge, because when you put yourself in a really tough situation, that's when you need to call up on experts and a lot of other people to kind of try to figure out how could this plan really look like. And I'm happy to see that we are already on the movement here in Australia, because when you look back into some of the statistics when it comes with electrical vehicle usage here in Australia, I must say it doesn't look so optimistic. But I think right now we hope that we will also give a spark of inspiration to others to follow into this direction. And the reason why, it's a number of reasons, but I think the most simplest reason is that when you look at the development of consumerism, is the right thing to do. We also see how the urbanization is increasing all across. I mean, by 2030, I think around 60% of the total human population will live in cities. And of course, we, as with our vision to create a better everyday life for the many people and go beyond our core business, we have a responsibility to play in that field. And that means that if people are going to live in more condensed cities and still want to have a beautiful home and get our products, we have to take our responsibility to see to that the solutions can arrive to the customer's home in a responsible way.
You spoke there briefly about how IKEA was hoping to spark change. IKEA was one of two co-founders of RE100 to get businesses going 100% with their renewable energy use. Because of you doing that, 161 major global companies like Apple, General Motors, Microsoft, Google, you name them, they seem to have joined up. They've all followed your lead on that. Are you hoping globally that by taking this lead on EV that you'll get a similar number of companies following your lead?
Yes, that's of course the best outcome, and it's not about, we don't view this as creating a competitive edge or anything like this. It's really purely driven from what is the right thing to do. And I think we're taking here the same approach as we did when we said all in with LED. We were one of the first companies to say that we're going to go all in with that. And right now here in Australia we can sell an LED bulb with 20-year lifetime for $1.5, $1.6. And that looked like an impossibility just maybe 6, 7, 8 years ago. So I think that kind of should also give encouragement to other industries and sectors, and especially within retailing, that if we join together for the good cause, then we can move things in a good direction.
James, you're with ANC. You've got about over 700 vehicles now. Could you tell the audience who ANC is, and also what do you think is the business bottom line benefit of switching to electric vehicles? Is there going to be a bottom line benefit for you?
John, eventually, not right at this moment, but can I just talk about particulate emissions? You've already mentioned the vast increase in home deliveries and vehicles on the road, and we know with economies becoming stronger, population increase, there are more vehicles on the road. Particulate emissions are a serious polluter for our general well-being, our communities. There are huge studies, published medical studies, that particulate emissions under 2.5 micron have serious health consequences: cardiovascular disease, respiratory disease, let alone skin irritations and those other more innocuous things. And I suspect all of us know someone that suffers from asthma. So these are serious problems that we have to encounter. And with the growth of deliveries and vehicles on the road, the wonderful offset in emissions over the last 30 years by higher standards, more efficiency, is being eroded by the number of vehicles. So there are bold stances that need to be taken for well-being. And it's fantastic to see IKEA as a global community and business supporting these sort of initiatives. Financially, right at this point in time, the return is a few years, maybe 4 years, based on the current prices of the vehicles.
And I guess those prices are going to come down, as we've seen with electric cars. Are you going to see a drop in those prices?
Absolutely. I mean, I reflect on when I purchased a flat screen television some years ago. Its capability wasn't so great and it was expensive. And I bought one recently and its capability does things I don't even understand, and it was a quarter of the price. So the great thing about electric vehicles is they're 30 to 40% cheaper to run. So that convergence of the high capital costs, because at the moment they're about double the cost of a traditional diesel vehicle. So that will converge, and our numbers are about 4 to 5 years. That will change very, very quickly. But that's on today's prices. So we're expecting those vehicles to become really affordable for the broader community and for business.
Mark, you have been in the transportation industry for quite some time. Sorry about the feedback, everyone. Tell us, your company is making trucks, electric trucks, locally here in Australia. What have been the barriers and the impediments to you getting that up and running, and what can the audience, what can businesses, what can governments do to reduce those impediments so we can get more companies, not just IKEA, but other companies making that transition to electric?
Sure, thanks, John. Let me just start out by saying congrats to IKEA and to ANC for the initiative here. This is wonderful. It's good for all of us. It will help secure a sustainable transport future for us, because the freight task is only increasing and it will only continue to increase. But yeah, I've been in the transport industry for a little while, let's not say too long. But I've come across to See Electric now. The company I've been with in the past has been a diesel engine manufacturer and one of the large European OEMs. But when we talk about electric, 100% electric drives, there's 3 key factors that have limited the uptake of them within the market. As James has pointed out, the number 1 has been cost, the second issue has been range, and the third has been weight. Because you need to make it, in the past you've had to make a decision. Do you want to transport batteries or do you want to transport payload or people? It could be either freight or people. So you had to make that decision. But we're at a point now where battery density has risen to a particular level. Battery prices are now, at the end of 2016, they dropped to less than $300 per kilowatt hour. And it's meant that the weight now is acceptable. There's a slight weight trade-off you need to make. The cost of the overall package has come down, and the range is out at that 200, 300 plus kilometre level. So when you're talking about city-based deliveries that go out, do 200, 250 kilometres a day, and they return to base at night, it works. Plug it in the evening and you're ready to go again in the morning. The situation has now got to that stage. Now what we're seeing with battery technology is, if I take a poor case scenario, battery technology is moving forward, or battery density is increasing at around 15% a year. On a given year, it's probably going to go, it'll escalate faster than that. And that means that each year we're going to see extended range or reduced weight. And at the same time, cost is coming out. So the economics, while they might be 3, 4 or 5 years today, next year they're going to be better, they're going to be better the year after. It's here and now. We're into this.
Now you mentioned there you were talking about 200, 250 kilometres. Is that the kind of range of the vehicle we're talking about today? And how long does that actually take to recharge now? And will that get even better going forward?
The situation today, the economics today are, if you want more range, you need to add more batteries and you add more cost and you forgo payload. With a range of that 200, 300 plus kilometres, we've got the right price points and we've got everything coming together that meets. It's the first time we've got to that stage, but it's going to get better. So things are working and they're working well. As I say, battery technology is getting better. Charger technology as well. You mentioned tritium earlier. There is a number of players in the market, tritium being one of the leaders. Their prices are coming down, their capacity to charge is going up. Another advantage with battery technology, it's adapting to fast charging cycles better. So this all works. Again, I've said that 3 or 4 times now, but it does. It works today. So unfortunately, we need to be going forward quicker than what we are. How do we achieve that? Well, if you look at where it's successful, in the US, in parts of Europe, in China, even in New Zealand, government have incentivised customers and companies to move forward with this. The reality is there is a cost penalty today, but it's only a relatively small one. I can argue that. And you can make it work. But if incentives were in place, to encourage us as consumers, commercial vehicle consumers, to take this up, you know it would go forward at an exponential rate, and it's coming.
Now, one of the problems right now with electric vehicles in Australia is we've now got to a point, and this is my own experience, that I've got 2 electric vehicles. Luckily, one is a plug-in hybrid, so if I can pull back on petrol. But near to me, we've got 2 proper chargers. And 2 things happen. One is you get some lovely person with a petrol vehicle just goes and parks in your electric vehicle spot, and which is not the best thing when you're running low on electricity in your battery. And the other thing is now which is a good thing, is now I'm turning up to recharging points to see that, you know, there's 2 electric cars already in there getting charged up, and there's a couple of people waiting. So we're now at that stage where we're falling behind. We've only got about 4,000 electric vehicles in Australia right now, but it's got to that point where it's really falling behind. Now I'm thinking, you've got alone, James, you've got 700 plus vehicles. Over time, undoubtedly, you're going to switch those to electric and some maybe to hydrogen. How are we going when it comes to recharging for your kind of trucks? What do you need to see?
That infrastructure is really challenging. And the way we consume energy at the moment, if I look at my behaviour, I get in my car, I don't have an electric car, but if I get in my vehicle and my fuel gauge is low, I stop and fill up. You have that experience, John. You can't do that with an electric vehicle. So charging infrastructure and the way we consume energy is going to change significantly. And government, industry are going to have to participate to produce this charging infrastructure, whether it be at home or at work. I mean, a lot of people are going to drive to work in electric vehicles. They're going to charge their vehicles at work. So business has to be engaged in this as well. It's a big challenge.
Now, Mark, from your point of view, what is you're manufacturing these vehicles, you're looking at the transport sector. What is the potential? What's the blue sky potential? What would you like to see within that sector? And maybe take us through what you can see as considered to be the benefits of EVs. I'm looking at it thinking they're not as noisy, there's a lot less parts. What are the benefits of, so where's it going and what are the benefits?
There's a couple of points. If I can just backtrack for one moment, from a charging perspective, and this is not about C-Electric, but one of the great things about our driveline is with every system that we manufacture, it has an onboard charger. So it's simply a matter of plugging it into a standard commercially available 3-phase 32 amp 5-pin plug. You don't have to go to a special charger, you just need to go to a 3-phase power point, you plug it in, 4, 5, 6 hours later you're fully charged. So that works today. If I talk a little bit about the size of the market and the advantage that come through electric, on the road today in Australia, and the statistics are from the ABS from last year, there's 100,000 articulated diesel trucks, there's 500,000 rigid delivery vehicles. It's a huge vehicle park or vehicle population, 600,000 vehicles. So I want to bring that down a little bit. If we talk about the range, the 4.5 tonne to 20 tonne range of vehicles, then we're talking about 250,000 trucks. For safety, I'm going to roll that down to 200,000 vehicles on the road. How many kilometres a day does each of those vehicles do? Are we happy with 100? 100 kilometres a day?
Double it.
Probably more, but
Yeah,
for the sake of my argument, let's say 100. And these vehicles on average, they're all diesel, they're using about 15 litres of fuel per 100 kilometres. How much CO2 do you think those 200,000 vehicles are producing? Per day? 7,000 tonnes. Solutions are here today to start changing these out to 100% electric without a charger network in place. We don't need to wait. All you need, you've got them all over your workshops, 3-phase, 32 amp, 5-pin plug, you can plug in these trucks today, right up to that 24 tonne capacity. The argument is so simple to make. We want to reduce our carbon footprint. Here's a great way to start.
And I guess one of the other things which is a real benefit of electric vehicles, and Anheuser-Busch have been looking at this, they've just ordered 800 hydrogen trucks, and the aim is to take tap water, take renewable energy that they've got through a PPA, and turn that into hydrogen. So you literally the only pollution coming out of a truck is water coming out of the back. A lot of businesses are now having what we call PPAs, where you're essentially buying power directly from the solar farm, you're buying power directly from the wind farm, and that's how the RE100 initiative that the Climate Group and CDP started with help from IKEA, that's what a lot of businesses are now doing. They're buying direct from the farm. So I guess, do you expect to see, Mark, more businesses that move into this, doing those kind of, where they're buying renewable energy and then using that specifically for electric truck fleets? So we literally will have zero carbon emission transportation.
The simple answer is yes. The complex answer is when. I think we all accept that we're moving towards an electric transport future. Maybe hydrogen has a part in that. Maybe hydrogen becomes part of the range extender. Technology, again, needs to change a lot in that area and become smaller, become more efficient. But I have, without a hesitation of a doubt, the world is going transport electric. When is that going to happen? The challenge we face here is there's no incentives in place. We have challenges with licensing agreements from your car driver's licence, particularly for that last mile delivery. We have particularly onerous regulations, I would say, in Australia in that regard. If we can get the government on board to recognise some of these issues, perhaps put some funding forward for the initial 1 or 2 years, the uptake will come forward and it'll just start to escalate upon itself and it'll snowball forward.
Now, I've got 2 more questions I'm going to ask the guys, and then we're going to pass. I think we've got 2 microphones at the back, I believe. So if we can have 2 people who can stand either side, and we're going to throw them to you guys in case you have any questions of the panel. So have a think about what you might want to ask based on what you've heard. Jan, if I could ask you a final question to you. I get all the IKEA media releases for the stuff I'm doing in the media. Every time I see it, there's innovation and sustainability, but there always seems to be a bottom line financial benefit. This is not just good for the planet and good for people, it's actually good for the IKEA bottom line. Based on what you've learned at IKEA from that process, what advice would you give to people here today from companies as to what you've learned from that? What would you pass on to them?
A very good question. And it's building a little bit on what Mark was here, and the question you gave to him. Because I think step number 1 is actually sincerely take in all of the facts and the trends that you can see around in the market space and from country to country. I already mentioned some of the statistics about the urbanization. Another figure is actually 3 billion. 2 billion people today are considered to be living in the middle class and with those consumption patterns. But all statistics is showing that by 2030, there will be another 3 billion people joining the middle class. That makes 5 billion people, and that's a good thing. But with that comes also, of course, a lot of challenges. Because it's about not everyone will be able to change the behavior. You know, consumerism is here and it will evolve over time. That means that it's continuously pressure also on raw material with the urbanization and also the consumption path. So when just looking at all of the statistics and anyone wanting to take a full accountability responsibility for the lifetime of a company or a business to grow, need to kind of take that and let it sink in. The second step is, of course, to dare to also to think mid-term and long-term. That means to actually imagine where will my company be in 5 years, where do we want to be in 10 years. And also at the same time, while looking at maybe quarterly kind of profit and loss and the revenue part and so on, actually creating a picture of the future where you would like to place yourself. And I think that's it sounds like a simple exercise and so on, but you need to also step up with some bold leadership to be able to both work with here and now, but at the same time think about what's coming around the corner. And I think that's very much how also within IKEA we have on various different levels, from global down to regions and into the countries, where we give and allow ourselves to kind of discuss these matters and then making these kind of decisions. And sometimes it's scary because we don't sit with the answers always. You know, will it 100% work? But it feels good when you can go back home and sleep good with a hand on your heart and say, you know, we are doing this because it's the right thing to do. But the beauty of it is that so far we have only seen that it actually makes good business sense also. It's a win-win-win situation. And I think that is just giving encouragement to develop it further in that direction.
My final question before we go to the audience is to you, Mark and James. Getting something like this off the ground is never easy. There are so many hurdles you've got to overcome. You've done that. People here are going to be able to look at the truck outside in a minute. But for other companies who are here, and I can see a few faces I know from different companies that could use this technology, what were the key learnings you had from this process of putting this in place that you can share with people who might be interested in doing it themselves?
The key learning for me is collaboration. So there is no way that ANC could ever achieve anything like this without someone as powerful as IKEA. So thank you, Jan, it's fantastic. Also our impact. Our impact is far more meaningful when we work in collaboration with other organisations. Traditionally, the transport industry has been very, very transactional. You know, what can we do for you today and what's the price? That's a short-term discussion. The discussions that now we're having are much longer term and they're much more holistic. So they've got to be price-based, they've got to be service-based, and they've got to be community and wellbeing based. And that's the important part. So it's a much more interesting discussion and has much more long-term effects and challenges and benefits, and it's actually much more exciting. So,
Mark, anything to add to that?
Well, look, from a product perspective and how to get them on the road with other customers, we're more than happy to talk to anyone, of course, but it is a collaboration at the same time. It's about understanding the needs of the individual application and tailoring a solution that meets those needs perfectly first time, every time. That's what we're about.
Okay, so we do have 2 microphones. So, okay, one over there, and where's the other microphone? And one over here. Does anyone, we've got about 10 minutes for questions. If we can start with you, sir. If you could give your name and title when you, if you could stand up, that would be great. Thank you.
Hi, my name's Paul Fox. I'm a co-founder of EV Networks, and we're building a nationwide ultra-fast charging network. And so one of the ideas that we have is that the charging infrastructure will be shared in much the same way as existing transport infrastructure is shared. And so I think a question for Jan and maybe also more generally for James is, will IKEA make your on-site charging infrastructure also available to the public as well as for the use of the fleet? And then maybe more generally, I mean, does it make sense for fleets to anchor new public charging?
Yeah.
Yes, of course. It's a definitive yes on that question. We already in Europe, in most of our stores and so on, we give it for free access to electricity to charge your vehicles. That's a lot of focus on, of course, on personal car ownership and so on. As we just heard, it's maybe around 4,000 cars right now running around in Australia with electricity. But we are just now in the phase to map it out and to a rollout plan for charging also for the 4,000 that have private cars to get access to that. We believe that it's a little bit about the chicken and the hen, you could say, in that sense. But we said it's better that we give it all possibilities for the ones, and hopefully it will trigger something. So definitely we are on the way to put that into place in all of our units. And then we have special cooperation, of course, when it's all the commercial fleets that needs to go between the store and the distribution centers and so forth, and finding the best solutions.
Anyone else want to add to that?
I'd love to, thanks, John. Jan mentioned about the charging points, but what he's actually done is actually put charging points where the vehicles can be charged. So it's a bold step. And Mark mentioned that, you know, those facilities are available. Are they in the right space? So these are some of the bold initiatives that IKEA have taken, so that allows us to be able to charge the vehicles in the right area. So they're great things to do.
Next question over here. If you can stand up and give us your name and title, please.
Can you hear me? Chris Anderson, Williams Sonoma, Logistics Director. I was just wondering, first of all, congratulations to IKEA for taking this initiative forward. Fantastic. I wish we all did that. I have a couple of questions. Can you piggyback off the Tesla supercharger network? Question one. And question two, I'd like to hear a little bit more about the vehicle outside. Does it have regenerative braking? Is there any exploration of some kind of solar panels? Because these vehicles, they stop for quite a bit of time in their delivery day. There's probably, in Australia, there's quite a lot of opportunity to recharge those batteries. So just wondering if you could answer that. Thank you.
Who would like to begin with that one?
The technical guy.
Yeah.
I cannot answer on that.
I like the way you space yourself apart from the
Suddenly I'm isolated. Look, with this particular vehicle, yes, it has multi-stage regenerative braking, of course, perhaps of course. When it comes to the charging, we don't, with this particular design and with all the C electric drives, they come with their onboard chargers. All they need to do is be plugged in. Can they take advantage of high-speed chargers? Yes, they can, if we've got the right plugs available. But at the moment, that's not necessary. We don't need to wait for any systems to come or to arrive. These vehicles are ready to go today. Just plug into your standard three-phase 32-amp power point and it will charge in that 4-6 hour block. Solar panels is a different issue down the track. No, they're not fitted with any of those at the moment.
Any other question over here? And again, if you can give us your name and title, please.
Good afternoon. My name is Benjamin Duncan. I'm a sustainability consultant. And I'm just interested in Jan's points of view in terms of, do you think moving to an EV fleet will contribute to customer perception of IKEA as a brand to improve? And is it something that you monitor on a regular basis to find out whether your sustainability initiatives are actually improving the customer experience?
No, we measure quite regularly with something we call also brand capital. So we are having, to try to see what's the view of the brand on each different market. And of course we hope that, this is one part out of the total people and planet positive strategy that we have. And we are trying to show also what we can do and what we can influence as a company with our decisions. We are showing the way that we are taking that accountability responsibility. Then there is a lot of other things that I as an individual, living in Sydney, living in Melbourne, Perth, or wherever I live, that I can stop also, hopefully it will spark in an idea about stop and to reflect about how do I live my life? How do I actually contribute from my side as an individual? And that is where we're trying to also, of course, with our range to talk about, a more sustainable life at home. So that is another part of the people and planet positive strategy. And of course, there should be synergies in all of this. So we are of course hoping also that this what we are doing right now with the electrical vehicle part and going in that path, along that way, people will also maybe stop and reflect on themselves and say, oh, if a company is doing something like that, what can I actually do? Because there are a number of things that each one of us and individuals can do if we think that it's important for the next generation, for the most important people that we have, which is our children. So.
Yeah, and that was a really good question because it was a question about the perception of customers towards you as a brand. Now, obviously, keeping clients happy is important because you want them back to come back and buy the next renovation equipment, from you guys. You're very good in. I've just done a kitchen renovation using IKEA, so it was interesting for me because I was going around the store and seeing lots of different environmental messages explaining to clients why it was more sustainable, why it was more energy saving. You were educating them about often how it could save money and save the planet. How are you going to do that with this? Are you going to be promoting your electric vehicle delivery trucks to customers so they're aware you're doing it?
Yes, you can see the two trucks out here also that we put the brand. So co-branding normally is not something that we do a lot within IKEA. But we feel really proud about it. So that's one way to do it. And of course, we're going to continue to publish our sustainability report the yearly, where we are fully transparent about all of the different initiatives that we are doing, because this is only, as I said, one part of the totality of the People and Planet Positive. So that's the way that we will continue to showcase, be transparent, and we are also open for anyone that would like to continue to have dialogue with us, no matter if you're a private person or if they're like-minded companies, because we believe that instead of us sitting with, if we have some insights, we are ready to share it, because again, we have to start a movement in these areas.
So if there are people here today from different companies and they want to go this direction, IKEA can give them some guidance on that?
Absolutely.
Yeah, excellent. Time for 2 more questions, if that's okay, or 3 actually. Stephen, over the back there, if we can get a microphone over there. If you want to put your hand up. Yeah. Andrew, sorry, get it right. Yeah. It's your new name. Sorry, Andrew.
Hi, I'm Andrew, actually known as Stephen, according to John. Andrew Peterson, the CEO of the Business Council for Sustainable Development Australia, which is part of the World Business Council for Sustainable Development. And full disclosure, IKEA is a member of the WBCSD. My question is to the 3 panellists, and it's one in relation to the 80-20 rule, or as we like to call it, scale and acceleration. These kinds of initiatives are incredibly important to send signals, both to community, clearly to investors, and also to business, and in this case, transport and logistics industries. But how do we then take it to the next level? What's going to be the signals, both positive and negative, in Australia, that we're going to see full immersion of this kind of important transition by transport and logistics to do this? And of course we need to talk about carbon pricing, of course we need to talk about industry assistance, of course we need to talk about circularity, which is a very important issue to IKEA. So from the 3 perspectives of supply of product, transportation and retail itself, what are those signals in Australia that we need to see for this to be totally immersed right throughout the economy?
And is that a question? You've got a question at the end of that, or just a statement? That was the question. Who would like to answer that? Sorry,
maybe not answering totally the full question, but I can just say that how I'm thinking is that a way to take it to the next level and to go faster and quicker, I'm hoping on everyone, on you as consumers, because the power that we have as consumers, we're not just only having jobs and working, so we are also consumers. If we start to, more and more of us, to actually put more demands on where I'm going to put my dollars, who I'm going to purchase from, then I think actually that's a very, very powerful way. So what I'm talking about is all the people that's making up the communities getting more involved and saying, you know what, I would like to only have engagement if there are companies behaving in this way, or I would like to have this in place in my community. I think that is a very, very, very powerful kind of wave that that should most probably start. And that would also help us in IKEA, because for sure there's no sun without spots. We are trying to do everything that we see and that we believe that is the right thing to do. But again, we are also very responsive to input that we are getting and trying to look at, okay, this is what we can affect and what we can do something about. Let's do something about it. Hopefully also it, like a stone on the water and give some more rings and so on. So, and then I think that the last thing is that we haven't maybe been so engaging and outspoken. We've been with the brand here in Australia for more than plus 40 years. It's not always that we are talking so openly about this, so we have changed the direction now. We want to get engagement with the communities in a tighter dialogue. We want to be engaged with governments and local governments, and also other retailers or industries, because we believe that the only way forward is together.
Good answer, good question. Thank you, Andrew. You're sitting next to us, Stephen, that's why I've got to get new glasses. Now, final question, if we can, this gentleman here.
Hi, I'm Kirk Conningham with the Australian Logistics Council, and I really do commend you and the whole panel. It's been a fascinating conversation. I only came for the meatballs yarn, but I haven't seen them yet, so I'm hoping they're there. But one thing that hasn't really been touched on so far is the role of government in all this. Now, quite clearly, we've seen industry leadership. We led a panel yesterday afternoon with Woolworths, Coles, DHL, Australia Post. Industry is keen to get moving on this. The experience in other countries has been quite different to our own, where there has been some support. We had a Senate inquiry come down only about 3 weeks ago and said absolutely nothing about EVs in terms of delivery. We've got sustainability, we've got safety, the new vehicles are just far more safe, and we've got the silent delivery in the encroachment of our urgent thing. All of these things are huge benefits to all over society, yet my experience so far is that government is not part of the conversation. I'm just hoping that you guys have had a different experience.
I think it's a good question because Infrastructure Australia has just come out with the 29 new priorities. And the one they wanted to talk about more than anything else was the need for electric vehicle infrastructure. You know, what's it going to look like? A 10% EV, 25%, 50%? What's your answer to that? Should government be doing more?
Look, I think certainly there's, to jump on the question from before as well, that little bit to that, I think the government can really kickstart this whole program. They can really get that ball rolling. And I know I said it earlier, but I'll repeat it again now. In the US, in Europe, in China, and even in New Zealand, incentives are in place today, financial incentives, to get this started. They're short-term incentives, but it's to get out there and to try the product, to prove that it's working. I think one of the realities we face as Australians is that, in general terms, we're fairly cost conscious. If it's going to cost me a little bit more, I'm going to think twice about doing it. And certainly it's been my experience in the transport industry that that's the case as well. If there's a cheaper option, that's the one I'll take because I have a shorter payback period. When we're starting to talk about electric at this point in time, there is a cost impediment there. As James said, 4 or 5 years at the moment. With some short-term incentives in place, that could bring that back to perhaps parity today. Yep. And then you'd be on your way to changing the whole fleet, those that were suitable in that 200, 300 kilometre range today. But certainly the government needs to get behind. I would argue that there's value in the government getting behind it if we want to change our carbon footprint, if we want to produce a sustainable future for our children tomorrow.
Okay, well, I'll tell you what, we might just take one more question before we go to food and drink. Anyone else want a final question? So I know someone else had their hand up. No? Oh, you've got it there, that's it. Just last one here, thank you.
My name is Jahangir Hussain, and I'm an associate professor at Macquarie University. So in fact, actually, we are working in a project related to electric car charging system that's actually supported by Australian Research Council. So the car charging system that actually we are developing is like we call it a smart car charging system. So this car charging system has actually got 4 different functions. So definitely, I mean, it can charge the, electric vehicle, but on top of that, it can return back the energy to the, grid or in your home if you want to run any of your appliances.
From the battery and put it back into the grid or the home. Yeah.
And also, I mean, it has got the capability to transfer power from one vehicle to another vehicle. For example, let's say you are driving a truck in your remote location where there is no car charging system available. But if you have got another vehicle, I mean, that's electric, you can easily transfer power from that vehicle to your vehicle. And also, I mean, it has got the capability to solve some of the grid problems like the power quality and voltage. So that's, I mean, just I want to like to share. But I just question to Mark that, I mean, I know that many like electric, industry, they are now thinking about that bi-directional car charging system. So are you thinking to, implement some?
Yes, we're thinking very hard about that. Of course, it's an option for the future. Of course, there's a lot of challenges with relying, using inverters to put power back into the power system. It creates massive challenges because it has to synchronise with the system and everything else. So it's not a simple exercise of having it's not as simple as having simply a bi-directional charger. There's other issues that need to be considered. So are we thinking about it? To answer your question succinctly, yes.
Yeah, it's a really good point because in about 3 months' time I'm getting a bi-directional charger for my home. So in addition to having a 13 kilowatt battery that all my solar goes into, we're going to be able to put, which we already do, solar power into the cars, but we'll also then be able to put that battery power back into the house. So you'll be able to have, you know, the battery from your car running your house or running your business, which could be a really good way if you're getting into trucks with really big batteries of reducing peak demand costs. So there's a lot of potential. It's bi-directional charging, in case you want to look it up. Now, we come to an end there. What I would really, any of you who might be interested in knowing more, IKEA is going to be putting this stuff out on social media. They'll have it on their website. I'd also encourage you to look at what IKEA is doing on websites like Clean Technica, Renew Economy. I found a great story the other day, Jan, about IKEA in India. I've got hundreds of electric tuk-tuks that they're doing deliveries with. So they're also doing appropriate vehicles for different markets, which is very exciting to see. So Renew Economy and Clean Technica are great sources of regular information. And as I said, you'll be seeing more on IKEA's social media feed. And as a slight kind of plug, I guess, for the Good News with John D on ABC Radio, every Sunday night on Nightlife at 10:45. Usually every week I'm talking about some kind of electric vehicle development. So and it's also on the ABC website. So if you do want to keep up to speed, I'm usually covering that on the ABC as well. Thank you very much for coming, everyone. James, Mark, and Jan, thank you very much. Also want to thank Kate and Ali and the IKEA team who put this event together. As you all know, this all looks so well organised, and that's down to a lot of hard work by the IKEA team. So thank you to Ali and everyone else for doing that. We do have more food and drink, and then at 1 o'clock, ANC is going to be doing little tours of the trucks outside to answer any questions you have one-on-one. So I'm John D. Thank you very much for coming down here today. Thank you.
Thanks, Jan. Well done, mate. Thank you.